From that point on, Miss Harris would not stop gushing over her fiancé every day. He came from a well-known family that resided in a posh neighborhood in the city and was extremely intelligent and wealthy. You have one last chance to witness something amazing, Miss Thompson, and I'll invite you to my wedding. Such an event was not something I planned to attend. No matter how glamorous the venue or how good the food might be, I didn't want to go. Miss Harris said, "Oh right, I'll show you a picture of his house," and she began using her smartphone. I didn't care that she was wearing her wedding dress, and I knew I would be seated with the other female employees. I see now. That concludes it. Miss Harris moved her smartphone screen closer to me after saying that. There was a house that I knew. Isn't it amazing? His family resides in the exquisite and magnificent residence. They have to be really well off. Miss Harris said that I was staring at her smartphone screen the entire time. Are you surprised? Oh my! I can also show you images of the interior of the house if you would like. She slid the picture, and I saw something much more familiar. This is it. You could never hope to set foot inside this opulent home. Miss Thompson, do you feel jealous? I cut her in mid-sentence and spoke quickly. Actually, this is my family's house. Kimberly Thompson is my name, and I work for a small to medium-sized business. Despite being 34 years old, I am still unmarried. I've been employed by the organization for more than 12 years. I was hired there immediately after receiving my college degree. All the other women who joined the firm at the same time as me have gone after getting married, and I, being the oldest female employee, am often referred to as the old maid. Put otherwise, I am the only one who continued to work there. Not that I'm trying to find a husband there. I simply work hard every day. I like to be by myself, have a tendency to keep to myself, and struggle with social interaction. I am definitely a stick in the mud when it comes to individuals around me. However, I take my work seriously, and because I've been with the organization for a while, it appears that the other staff members appreciate and care about me. Okay, I can get how they feel. I don't swap contact details with anyone or attend any social gatherings with my coworkers. In my personal life, I don't hang out and I only talk to people when it's very important. It makes sense that they wouldn't bother inviting me since they think I'm dull. They can't complain, though, because I've been with the firm for a long time and do a decent job at what I do. I am a senior in college. That's the type of discomfort I believe I bring. For my part, I really find it advantageous that no one approaches me. I'm free to work in peace and to do as I choose during my breaks. Furthermore, there are no entertaining or client-facing duties in this profession. Thus, I'm not involved in any problematic scenario involving human interactions. Additionally, I'm free to watch as much of my favorite anime as I like on my days off. I enjoy reading as well. Thus, it's fun to browse the bookshop and make impulsive book purchases based only on the covers. Some individuals may initially think that my existence is lonely and meaningless. Thus, it's fun to browse the bookshop and make impulsive book purchases based only on the covers. Some individuals may initially think that my existence is lonely and meaningless. However, I believed that my happy place was in this tranquil and serene existence. But when a young lady started working at the firm, everything began to shift. She was entirely different from me. A joyful, kind woman with outstanding communication abilities. Michelle Harris is her name. Miss Harris was the kind that went out of her way to engage others, and she appeared to particularly touch the men's hearts. She was so unlike me that I had the impression that I was watching a movie character when I looked at her. The group's focal point was an intelligent, trustworthy woman. Most likely the kind of lady I would find difficult to cope with. As I was having these kinds of thoughts, I heard some female staff members laughing and conversing happily in the lavatory. All of this began when they entered the bathroom while I was using it. fix their cosmetics, and then openly began to criticize and chat. Harris, you know that new girl? She's simply irritating, don't you think? You know what I mean? It appears like she is attempting to win over guys, doesn't she? It certainly conveys the feeling. That must be deliberate, am I right? She's always striving to seem cute. It really irritates me. Isn't her youth the only thing that makes her appealing? Not even she can perform her job well. Isn't it awkward to pursue men blindly all the time? Such critical remarks. It makes sense that a new hire wouldn't be able to perform as effectively. Furthermore, it occurred to me that perhaps Harris has to rely on the male staff members since you guys aren't giving her the necessary skills to perform her duties. Every now and again, I find myself staring at Harris, who is so unlike me in both look and disposition. I have witnessed the female staff dismissing her with coldness on several occasions. Each time, Harris appeared depressed and eventually struck into a conversation with a male coworker. Thus, I don't believe she's attempting to win the guys over. She's been forced into these circumstances. These female coworkers are probably chatting about me too, but about other things. I'm sure it becomes worse for me if Harris is talked about in this way. Probably because I'm the oldest female employee and capable of doing my work effectively. I'm simply not seeing it. It may be really draining to be in interpersonal connections. I'm relieved I don't have to intervene. That's what I thought, and I sat on the toilet till they were done touch-ups and they went out. Then, on a different day, Harris was interacting and conversing with the female staff members in an odd way. She seemed to blend in with the other women, which shocked but pleased me. I decided to take my lunch break. Harris abruptly yelled out to me as I walked by them after getting up from my seat to go outside with my packed lunch. She asked me an absurd question as I turned around. "Ma'am, why aren't you married?" That inquiry is obviously malevolent. I was having trouble responding when I heard the female staff members behind Harris laughing. Lead on by them. Even the wide-eyed male staff began to giggle. Harris was complimented by a female employee who initially replied, "Hey, that's rude," before adding, "You're such a funny girl, Harris." After that, Harris began to ask me increasingly rude questions that I was unable to respond to because she believed she would be commended for making fun of me. "Have you ever had a boyfriend, Miss Thompson? For what number of years have you been single? To what extent have you been with people? Is it possible that you have no interest in men?" Without taking into account my sentiments at all, Harris continued to ask me these intimate questions. The disrespect only grew worse with time, and the staff members around her appeared to find it funny, supporting Harris as though they wanted her to do more. She must have been pleased to be accepted as one of them by the other female workers, making an effort to live up to their expectations. She continued to speak to me with more intensity. She started showing me off to me as things got more serious. I recently received a fancy bag as a present from my boyfriend. Tonight, I'm going to a fancy restaurant that has reservations for the next 6 months. Thompson, do you only eat mac and cheese at home? She had been operating on a petty one-upmanship basis. You don't appear to be involved with high-end products, Miss Thompson. How pitiful. She would interject with her irony. Instead of being upset, I was starting to think it was quite amazing. The more this pointless back and forth continued, the more I felt like I had to deal with Ms. Harris's workload. Ms. Harris was a very controlling person who showed no fear at all. She quickly transformed into a monster, and the other female employees didn't appear to be able to handle her. Then, after some time had gone, something occurred one day. Ms. Harris was quite happy when she arrived at work and struck up a conversation with me. I became engaged, even though I hadn't asked. She handed me a photo of her fiancé while she was saying this. Miss Harris kept chatting away as I tried to get back to work and replied in a charming, "That's nice. My fiancé is incredibly nice, wealthy, attractive, and ideal. Do you feel envious? Miss Thompson, I'm going to be sad to leave you here." She then moved her smartphone screen closer to my face. She constantly made fun of me and boasted about her fantastic fiancé, saying she had struck gold when she became engaged to him. To be honest, I'm envious. Sincerely, congratulations, I said. Miss Harris remarked, "Okay, I'm going back to work," and she went back to her desk, looking content. In this regard, it's nearly refreshing. I let out a long sigh. I have to put my work first. I was attempting to change my perspective when I heard the other female staff conversing behind me. Isn't she getting a little too carried away? Really, is she acting so excited about getting married just because that? Why is it the case? Like she can truly find happiness in her marriage. She might cheat on him and probably isn't even capable of doing housekeeping. I concur. She seems like the kind who, if her allure wears off, will file for divorce really soon. Completely concur. She seems like the kind who, if her allure wears off, will file for divorce really soon. Completely concur. One started to whine, and the others followed suit, letting out their grievances. I questioned the female staff members. Aren't you all friends with Miss Harris? Just out of pure curiosity. What topic are you discussing? Not in a manner. They all chuckled. A woman like her is not someone we could ever be friends with. She simply believes that we are her pals. I understand. It appears that Miss Harris was able to turn the female staff members into adversaries once more. When she was mistreating me, they didn't care. However, as she became more determined to surpass me, she began to act similarly towards the other female staff members. I let out a soft sigh. You guys are the ones that kindled and fanned her fire, don't you? Miss Harris began bragging about her fiancé virtually every day after that. It seems he hails from a well-to-do family, is well-educated, makes a good living, and his parents live in a fancy neighborhood in Manhattan. You usually look so awful, Ms. Thompson, yet this is nothing to do with you. It appears that you may carry on leading a modest life by yourself. If anybody would marry you, it would probably just be leftovers. Someone with your level of prominence and income would never take you into consideration. You might have to settle with an ignorant, jobless man, but even he might turn you down since you're a dried-up old woman. Miss Harris would chuckle and add, Miss Thompson, I'll invite you to my wedding. That will be the last time you look good. To be sure, I didn't want to go to that. Her bridal gown didn't matter to me at all, and I would be sitting next to those female staff members without a doubt. I wouldn't want to be there, even if the food was wonderful and the location was glitzy. Oh, I just recalled, Miss Harris exclaimed as I was pondering this. I will present you with a photo of his parents' home. And she started to play about with her phone. The home of her fiancé's parents didn't pique my curiosity. And she started to play about with her phone. Her fiancé's parents' home didn't pique my curiosity at all. Yes, I did find it. That concludes it. As she moved her smartphone screen closer to me, Miss Harris spoke. Something looked like a familiar house. Isn't that wonderful? It's such a lovely and amazing house that his parents own. They have to be really rich. I will ultimately own everything here. I'm soaring above the earth. I've joined the wealthy group now. Miss Thompson, I'll ask you over if I feel like it. Even as Miss Harris stated this, I couldn't take my eyes off her smartphone screen. Did that surprise you? Oh my! Please feel free to see the inside images as well. Her phone glided over, bringing up more familiar sights. This is it. Such a mansion is too extravagant for you to view or enter, is it? Do you feel jealous? In a rush, I interrupted her and said, "Well, this is actually my parents' house." How come? What topic are you discussing? That is, this home in the picture. Miss Harris gave me a surprised look when I stated that. What? What do you mean? You shouldn't make such a shallow allegation just because you're jealous. Regardless of her words, I am certain that this is my parents' home. Oh, Miss Thompson, you're so high-level keeping a straight face while fooling around, but I said seriously no, I'm not kidding. Miss Harris seems to think I was joking and laughed out loud. After all, I'm an only child, so it's not like I have brothers who could marry her or anyone else. The only people living in this house are my parents, who have entered their 60s. She pointed to the picture and remarked, "This is really true. But notice that his automobile is also parked here, correct? Furthermore, how are you able to snap photos inside someone else's home?" She might not agree, but the pictures she was displaying to me were definitely of my parents' home. Everything about it, even the layout, was precisely like the home I grew up in. Then it dawned on me. One salesman that I could still clearly recall would come and depart from my parents' home. There, I had met and conversed with him. He was telling my parents all kinds of opportune things in a frantic attempt to acquire a contract. I inquired about Ms. Harris's fiancé's name. The salesperson had the same name. I understand. To impress her, that errand guy was acting like he owned my parents' house. What a pathetic man. Does he believe that would get him away with it? There were additional indications to me that Aaron wasn't a very decent man. He was constantly grinning, and he would happily reply, "I see," even when my parents suggested that they may pass on the deal this time. "Okay, I'll stop by once more later." However, as soon as he left the home, I noticed that he had a particularly ominous expression on his face from the window of my bedroom. It might have been that he was simply upset about not receiving the deal, but it made me feel awful. That this is unquestionably my parents' residence. Miss Harris doesn't need to know this. I'm not going to change my mind. Miss Harris was speaking up. How come? Miss Thompson's parents live in the house. That isn't feasible. I could explain to her, but she would not believe me. So one day after work, I made the decision to accompany her to my parents' place. I could explain to her, but she would not believe me. So one day after work, I made the decision to accompany her to my parents' place. I opened the gate for her when we got to my parents' house. I declared myself home as I opened the front door. My parents then grinned and emerged. "Greetings from home. We were curious as to why you suddenly announced that you were returning home. You brought a buddy as well. Although we don't see you very frequently, it's good to see your face again after a long absence. Given that you brought a buddy, we must provide you something. We took some candies with us from our vacation to France with your aunt. We're going to offer them some tea." My parents grinned broadly as they turned to face Miss Harris. I questioned my folks about her fiancé after mentioning his name. The salesperson. It wasn't long ago that he was here. After hearing my parents' response, Ms. Harris appeared to acknowledge the reality. She started crying as soon as we got to my room. What took place? Are you upset with him for lying to you about his family's residence? Although it was startling to be lied to, I didn't think it was a major catastrophe. Subsequently, Miss Harris expressed her regret and started discussing her engagement to Aaron. Miss Harris and Aaron reportedly crossed paths at a social event. When they were alone, Aaron told her that he worked for a large firm and that his family was well off, which is how his good looks and status got her to fall in love. They went on a couple dates after that and their friendship grew. Even though Aaron worked for a large firm, he came across as unexpectedly frugal. He paid for all of their dates initially, but over time he began to demand payment from Miss Harris, stating he was short on funds. Aaron abruptly made a proposal when Miss Harris brought it up, stating, "Actually, I want to save money because I'm going independent. We also have to put money aside for our wedding fund, right?" Taken aback by the proposition, Miss Harris became overly enthusiastic and began to part with money as he instructed. Aaron took advantage of this, borrowing money from Miss Harris more and more until, before she realized it, she was giving him a sizable amount. She was still completely taken in by his charming remarks, such as "it's for a happy married life together." Viewed objectively, one would assume that he wouldn't need to borrow money from his girlfriend if his family was truly affluent. However, Miss Harris appeared to have all faith in him, as though she was deeply in love. However, it appears that Miss Harris had realized it was a falsehood by now. Ms. Harris came to me in tears to apologize. "I'm terribly sorry, Ms. Thompson. I regret the awful attitude I've been displaying up to this point. Please accept my apology, even though I know you won't be able to." She sobbed as she said, "The other female employees led her to harass me. She didn't particularly enjoy gossiping or flaunting herself, but the other female employees encouraged her to do so, and she felt under pressure not to be left out again. It was difficult, but she claimed that having Aaron helped her get through it. She apologized once again and cried a lot. I felt bad for Mrs. Harris when I saw her in that state. She was having a lot of difficulty on her own. We could fire those female staff members, but we have to deal with the liar. My family and I am also involved, in a manner. He needs to learn a lesson from us. Let's take a lesson from that person. I choose to have Aaron called by Miss Harris." He altered his complexion the moment he noticed my face when we made plans to meet at a cafe. Aaron dropped his gaze, clearly uncomfortable. I informed him that I would notify his place of employment about his improper usage of the family home photo and his deceit of my junior colleague. He paled and began to apologize. "I apologize for that. Why then did you mislead and fool Miss Harris? She had excellent clothes and designer luggage, so it seems he had approached her because he assumed she had money." He turned to Miss Harris and shouted something ridiculous as he started to brazen it out. "It's mostly your fault for pursuing me despite my falsehoods being obvious to you. You should think of it as a thank you fee since I showed you a beautiful dream." His boldness astounded me. It brought to mind my family's secret side, which I observed through the window. "You suggested getting married. Miss Harris trusted you because of this." Aaron laughed a daring reply in return. "Miss Harris trusted you because of this." Aaron laughed a daring reply in return. That seemed like the wisest thing to say, in my opinion. "By what do you mean? So you weren't planning to wed Miss Harris?" "Yes, indeed. I have no immediate plans to get married." Aaron said as much with casualness. Miss Harris broke down in tears because she could stand it no longer. Aaron became irritated at seeing Miss Harris weep. How awful a man he is. Someone such as him doesn't deserve pity. "I recorded what you just said, and you know you can demand compensation for breaking off an engagement without a reasonable cause," I added, taking out a voice recorder. Aaron became pale and said, Whoa, that's going to be a problem," in a panic. I added, "You have to decide between paying back the money you borrowed from Ms. Harris plus some damages, or reporting this occurrence to the corporation." Aaron shrugged his shoulders and said, "I'll pay back the money." In response to this, we finally came to an understanding that he would reimburse Miss Harris in this way. It appears that Aaron was unfaithful and that his lover was overspending, much beyond what his pay could support. However, He was stealing money from Miss Harris in order to satisfy her since he was so infatuated with her. Ms. Harris firmly gripped my hand and thanked me several times after Aaron left the cafe. She expressed her regret for all that had occurred once more and pledged to behave differently. Ms. Harris no longer acts in the same manner towards me and has grown to love me. She no longer allows it affect her and focuses on her work, even when other female colleagues act rudely. When she sees the other women acting rudely towards her, she stops let it bother her and focuses on her work. Even with this view of her, the female staff continues to disparage her. However, I don't think it's worth it to deal with them. A heated verbal battle broke out between them later on after one of the female colleagues got engaged. Small-time resentments and jealousies began to interfere with their job, and when a frustrated supervisor took matters into more serious hands, they were all moved to different departments. These ladies weren't too dangerous when left alone, and it appears they are now quietly working in their new areas. Ms. Harris is able to work with greater freedom, and our department has become quiet and serene. I've been having lunch with Ms. Harris lately, and we talk about our interests. She's the reason I became interested in fashion, and she's the reason she became an anime enthusiast. Even if I don't get along with everyone, having a trustworthy person like Miss Harris has made my time at this organization much more pleasurable. Although prestige and wealth might be alluring, they are not everything in life. Despite my simplicity, I think that the ultimate satisfaction is to be able to lead a quiet and serene life on a daily basis. Today, I cooked lunch for myself. Please taste. I want to get better at cooking, she replied. I said, all right, let's go to a nearby park and eat. Yes, she cheerfully answered. I remarked, yes, to which she cheerfully replied, let's go to a nearby park and eat after tasting it.